Bezrat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give everyone big bracha v'tzlacha and a lot of siyata d'shmaya. May Bezrat Hashem, this beautiful month of light shine in everyone's life. May we all Bezrat Hashem achieve all our goals. May all our prayers be accepted b'ratzon, and may all the tzaddikim and tzaddikot that are with us here tonight be blessed with all the blessings. May Bezrat Hashem, we all celebrate together a personal redemption and a redemption for all Klal Am Yisrael. Amen. In Abutai, in these few weeks that right now we are passing, we have to understand that we are all being introduced to all the fundamentals of our life, of our Torah, and how to live our life in the most perfect way possible. We know about in this week's parashat, we're reading about a story of our ancestors. We go through all our avot. We go through Abraham, we go through Yitzchak, we go through Yaakov, we go through their lives, and we go through what they essentially did to establish our religion, our Torah, our holy way of life. A lot of the times, we can come to this mistake of thinking that the story or the occurrences of our ancestors is a story. And there it ends. Where the entire book of Bereshit seems to be just a book of history. A book of occurrences, of beautiful tests that our ancestors went through, and things that they overcome. In reality, Zohar Kadosh says, the book of Bereshit can't be further than a book of stories. Rather, it is a book of foundation, of the fundamental of who we are as a people, and how we should live our lives. And this is a general secret in the entire Torah Kula. Zohar Kadosh says, any single time the Torah wants to relay a secret, wants to relay a lesson, wants to relay something important, putting it in a language of text can chas v'shalom end up in a situation that text would be lost. And text is usually hard to relate to one another. And God forbid, down the line, we won't be able to have this text, this teaching within our hands. So Zohar Kadosh says, what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? In any place there is a fundamental secret, it forms it in an aspect of a story. And we now look at it, stories are something that we all gather on the table. We sit with our kids, we say the story, we make that moment live on in the future. We are able to ensure that regardless of what will occur, it will always continue to pass from generation to generation. And in these stories, there are always this or that. So Zohar Kadosh says, any time we find in any place of the Torah some sort of a language of like a story, a tale, it's not a story, it's not a tale, and it's not history. To go as far as even saying that a lot of the stories and the occurrences that we see in the Torah never even happened, but rather they were just a set of a construct of a teaching, of a concept that was put in a format that can be guaranteed that it will last for eternity. So when we approach these parashot that seem to be stories, we are not allowed to approach them as stories at all, but rather as how can we unlock a lesson, a key, how can we unlock a tool within our lives to better our lives, to live lives of bracha, to live lives of yeshua, to really illuminate the path of how we are going to lead ourselves in this world in order to ensure that us, our children, our future, our surroundings will all be in the path of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So now, but in this week's parasha, we see an occurrence, or like we mentioned, a secret that was put within, of essentially the foundation of who we are as a people. We now tell you that in ancient times, we would name people, nations, entities, for what their job was, for what they brought to fruition. And we see this with all the Shvatim. Every one of the Shvatim, of the tribes, the matriarchs name them off something that occurred within that time of their life. Or even we can go as far as saying with Yitzchak. Yitzchak is named Yitzchak because when HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Sarah that she would have a child, she laughed. So we see that the name always represents the fundamental of what it's called after. We see in this week's parasha, Yaakov in Alav Shalom goes through something, does something that brings enough of a reason to completely change his name. And like we mentioned, the name was always about the fundamental of who the individual was, what that individual brought to fruition. So the changing of the name is not just a changing of the name like today we change names of things, or everything is becoming new, so we are renewing it by just changing the name. Not at all. Changing the name means that the fundamental was no longer the same. That the fundamental existence has shifted, has changed. Where do we see this? we see that we Yaakov in Al-Basham holds on to the name Yaakov, the name that his parents gave him, that Kadosh Baruch Hu gave him, and shifted. Shifted to what? Shifted to Israel. Where essentially the name of our nation, or who we are, is also too within this concept of Israel. So we'd like to try to understand what occurred in this week's Parashah in order that we could understand as a nation how we should act, what our job is to do, what our purpose is. Being that in this week's Parashah, our job, our name, our essence was all given to us. So we'd like to try to take the simplicity of what occurred in this week's Parashah, and then we're going to slowly by slowly unpeel it and go into a deeper understanding of it. The Torah said that Yaakov Shalom is preparing for the reunion, preparing for the presence of Esav Rasha. And the entire night he's sitting and he's thinking of tomorrow, the fact that he's going to see Esav, and he doesn't know how Esav is going to receive him. Especially knowing that Esav had mitzvot and had good deeds. Yaakov was petrified. The Torah said that Yaakov Shalom woke up in the middle of the night and started to walk. To the point where Zohar goes as far as saying that he left his campsite, left his parents, left his children. Once he reached a place that he was alone, the Torah says, Vayevaser Yaakov levado, he got to a place that he was alone, the angel attacked him. And the angel fought with him. After that fight, we know that Yaakov was able to fight with him the entire night. In the end of that night, Yaakov was no longer Yaakov, but rather his name was Israel. So something occurred in that night. Something big enough that Yaakov changed, and our job and name now and our essence was given to us. So what was that? So when we look at these few psukim that we just mentioned, we can come to a few different questions. First of all, what is this concept of saying that the angel waited for Yaakov to be alone? We have to put context of who Yaakov's people were from the first place. Usually, when you say in a normal occurrence that a person, a robber, was waiting for an individual to be alone and then attack him, it usually refers that he needed to find a weak spot, an opportunity where the individual does not have support, in order to attack him. So the other individuals that were with that person pose a threat to him. So you wait until he's alone. But if we look at the actual group that were with Yaakov, they were not soldiers. They were not even men. They were a group of women and children. So what is this concept that we see Yaakov is walking alone, he leaves his wife, he leaves his children, and only now the angel sees fit to attack him. He is in this aspect of levado, alone. What was stopping the angel from the first place? It's not like Yaakov had an army with him that he needed to find a weak spot, an opportunity where Yaakov no longer has support to attack him. So what is this concept of levado? Now, what's even more interesting is this word levado, which means alone, is a very, very rare word in the Torah. It's a word that was only seen in a common use in one other place in the Torah. And that is what? Where we say, En od milvado. What is En od milvado? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is like alone. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is alone within the world. And that is our way of praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now even on that pasuk, when the word levado is used, which is this aspect of alone, can come a beautiful question of why is that the way we categorize HaKadosh Baruch Hu? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Melech, Malchei Melachim, creator of earth, creator of all the world. We should say, En od mimalchuto, there is nothing like his kingdomship, there is nothing like his power, there is nothing like his greatness, there is nothing like his might, his strength, his kindness. We say there is nothing like his alone, like of this aspect of levado, that there is no other but alone. So we really have to understand what is this concept of levado. And why is that such a big praise that we call HaKadosh Baruch Hu of En od milvado, that there is no one but him alone. So in order to understand this, we wanted to go a little bit into the motives of all the entities within this occurrence. The Malach, he had something in mind, clearly. He wanted to bring something to fruition. The question is, what was it? So all the Mefarshim say, he wanted a milchama, he wanted a fight, he wanted a war. Because he wanted a war, he waited to an aspect of levado. So clearly levado and milchama, levado alone, and war have something in common, being that the angel waited for him to be levado in order to create a war. So what is their similarity? There's a beautiful Zohar that talks about this concept of what is milchama. We know about that everything that exists in this world, there is a very, very basic fundamental recipe that allow it to exist. Without that basic fundamental recipe, it can't exist. So it's like a building. The fundamental of a building is the yesod, it's the foundation. Without the foundation, the building could never exist. There's no such thing as a building that stands on no foundation. A building with no foundation is a pile of rubble. Because what allows it to exist is a foundation that holds up all the walls. So in every single concept in the world, there is a foundation. You pull out the foundation, it's unable to exist. So Zohar asks, what is the foundation of milchama, of war, of chaos, of negative, of all these things that the angel of Esav wanted to essentially bring upon Yaakov? Zohar is something very simple. Zohar says, the foundation for war, for chaos, is two. Once there are two, there could be war. Once there are two, there could be chaos. Once there are two, there could be conflict. Where what allows war and, like we say in Hebrew, balagan, to even be a concept that is possible, is two. When there is one, there is no concept of being at war. It's like a person that's standing alone in a field. Can he be at war? Maybe if he's from Los Angeles, he could be at war with himself. But the idea of being at war must come from the fact that there need to be two. And as long as there is not two, there can't be war. There can't be conflict. It's like a desire. One desire, even if it's 100 people, there's no conflict. One mentality, even if there's 1,000 people, there's no conflict. One leadership, as long as there are one leadership, there is no conflict. When can conflict be a creation? When there are multiple. And as long as there are multiple, the foundation for milchama, for chaos, for negative, is always a possibility. Zohar says, the fight of Yetzer Hara in this world is to allow himself to exist. And the only way he could exist is if what? If there are two. Because once there are two, even within a person, two different thoughts, two conflicting ideas, two conflicting paths, two friends that now want different things, only then there could be a perud, a separation, a chaos, a war, a destruction that could possibly exist. And this Rabotai goes back to the first sin of all, to the first destruction of all. Adam and the snake. The Zohar says, what was the sin of Adam Arishon? We can't say that our world is destroyed and there's so much chaos and there's so much pain and suffering because Adam ate a fruit, ate a grape or an apple or a chita or a wheat. That's the reason that all this is destroyed. It's impossible to even come to this silly thought that all the destruction that occurs was because of eating a fruit. There must be something deeper. There must be more meaning behind it. There must be more a context that we're not clearly understanding. Zohar says what really occurred was two very simple things. First of all, the snake came to Adam and told Adam, you know, Adam Arishon, I was born a long, long time before you. We know the animals were created not on the 6th day, they were created, it depends, there was a few different times of creation, on the 5th day, on the 4th day, they were created at different times. But we also know that the days were not like today's days that pass so quickly. The days of the time were hundreds and maybe some even say millions of years because time wasn't structured yet. What creates time is 7 days in a week, 4 weeks in a month, 12 months in a year. That's what creates time. So even if the 1 day missing, time can't be a thing. Time only exists when there are 7 days. So as long as there wasn't 7 days, even 1 day lasted who knows how many millions of years. There's no time. It's about time. The snake came to Adam and said, you know, Adam, I was here way before you. I was here a long, long time ago. I know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you to eat from the tree. It's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was like you. He was a man. He ate from the tree and he became God. So the snake told Adam, now go, eat from the tree and become a God of your own. And not just become a leader of your own, challenge the God that told you to not become God. The snake's goal, the snake's desire was to do something very simple. It was just to create a desire for a second entity. to create an existence of two. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan and now Adam's plan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's desire, now Adam's desire. And once there are two, chaos could exist. Destruction could exist. War could exist. Negative could exist. But as long as there was only one, there is no such thing as chaos or war. The only thing that allows chaos and war to exist is two. So the real destruction of the world was the fact that Adam created a second entity, created a second path. That second path, that second entity was just a platform that now the Satan can build upon. Because now there are three, now there are four, now there are five. In conflict, it just spreads. Conflict doesn't necessarily slow down on its own. So the snake builds this fundamental destruction off of what? Off of this concept of conflict. As Rabbi Moshe Pinto says, we see it within the body. Before the body of Adam, and he wrote something beautiful about Chanukah, about this idea. The body of Adam desired to do mitzvot, desired to do good. The snake installed within Adam this concept that the body and the neshama, the physical and spiritual, are now two different entities. And now that there are two different entities and they're not aligned with their goal, with their path, where they want to reach, then there is chaos. The goal of the Satan from the beginning of time was simple. Create multiple entities. As long as there is multiple entities, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, could thrive. And nothing advances, nothing grows, and it stays in a chaos of one fighting against the other. And that's what we see happen with the world. The world, from Adam Arishon, generation after generation, of chaos and wars and destruction and idol worship. We call it a time of ribui malchuyot. That everyone wanted to be king, where everyone was his own leader, where everyone was his own entity. And as long as there are so many entities, then it's a place of chaos. It's like someone told us there's a country that there are 180 individuals that claim that they are the leader of the country. And it's a country of destruction, of war. Everyone are killing everyone. Because as long as there is not alignment, there are not ichud, there is not a reunion, and there are multiple, chaos will always be the thing with the most likelihood to succeed and to thrive. And that's what happened. Noach, Palaga, Sdom, generation after generation of mess and fighting and suffering and sadness and tears and chaos that could possibly exist. Until we come to this week's parashat, that we see that our forefathers are starting to reunite the world. They're starting to put back the pieces within the world. They're starting to put HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence within the world. They're starting to align the faith of the people of the world. Until we come to the place that after the slavery of Egypt, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu started to prepare the world for a reunion. He starts to prepare the world for a tikkun. He starts to prepare the world for the Geulah. How does he do so? He does so with Matan Torah. And that's this concept that we see how HaKadosh Baruch Hu was preparing the last Geulah, which didn't occur because of the golden calf. But also this is a lesson for us how the future Geulah will come to fruition as well. Zohar Kadosh says that when all Bnei Israel are surrounded around the nation, they were like what the Torah says, Ish Echad Belev Echad. That they were all unified. That they were all one. That they all looked up at one another and truly held an essence of what? Of one. In the aspect that there was no more conflict amongst Bnei Israel. There was no more division amongst Bnei Israel. And as long as there was no more division amongst Bnei Israel, chaos couldn't exist amongst Bnei Israel. Destruction couldn't exist amongst Bnei Israel. And that's when we come to the aspect of Matan Torah. Zohar Kadosh says, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Torah, we know that the entire world paused. Where the waves went still, the bees stopped to buzz, the birds stopped to church. The entire world came to a complete standstill from the giving of the Torah. Why? Arizal says something very simple. Arizal says it all stems from the first word of Matan Torah. Where we know that the first commandment was what? Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Translation of this pasuk is Anochi, I am your God and your creator. Arizal says that the moment the word Anochi, the first word of the Ten Commandments, was heard, the world stopped. That was the complete pausing of the world. Why? Arizal says because the word Anochi is Sod Aleph. It's the secret of Aleph. Aleph is the first letter. The secret of one. Why the secret of one? Zohar Kadosh said that the first word that came, that was heard from Hashem, wasn't heard from the sky. It was heard from the entire world. It was heard from every object, where the books became a speaker for Hashem. The bee became a speaker for Hashem. The cups became the speaker of Hashem. Where in every single entity, the voice of Hashem emanated out from. Or in simpler words, Kadosh Baruch Hu conquered the world. He showed that he had presence and he was behind it all. When do we know that someone is within something? When he's able to emanate from that something outwards. It's like a room. How do you know who's in the room? If you can't enter the room, you listen who's inside. And the voice of the person that's coming out of the room, you know that individual is within the room. So if the voice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu came out from every object where it said Anochi, essentially HaKadosh Baruch Hu proved that what? That he is within everything. If he is within everything, and he is behind everything, and he is what? He is Levado. He is alone. He is with no other beside him. That is the biggest praise and the biggest worshipping that we can do to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To shine within the world the concept of Levado. Because this aspect of Levado is a world that chaos and negativity and Yetzer Hara cannot exist. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said the word Anochi, it proved to the entire world that he is behind everything. The world became one. When the world is one and the world is alone like one, that comes to a place that no negativity could exist within the world. And that's why the Geulah was supposed to come in that manner. It all needed to always come from the aspect of what? Of reconnecting, linking everything together. And that's what we say. The Torah is the Chol Nitivotea Shalom. The Torah's secret, the Torah's gift, that it takes many, many paths, many, many nitivot, like lanes, and it bridges them together. It links them together. It makes them one entity. It makes them no longer multiple concepts. It makes them all into one singular being. That's what the Torah was always meant to do. To link us together. To repair the world. To unify the world. To prove that within this world, and od milevado, we are alone in this world. This world is empty. And that's what Bnei Israel reached to the level when they were receiving the Torah. They looked at their friend, and they didn't see their friend as another entity. They saw their friend as a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So even within the world, they looked around, they said, I am alone within the world. Being that it's just me and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I am a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if I'm a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and there's only me and Hashem, which are one, nothing else could exist. And if nothing else could exist, then we live truly in a perfect world. Now, obviously, now that we understand this, we can understand very clearly why the Satan does what he does. All his fight is not even necessarily to fight us. It's just to be. But not just to be something else. To be the second entity. To create a division. And once there is a division, once there is a second entity, then all chaos breaks loose. And not even, we can see this, in the name of the Satan. In the Zohar Kadosh, or in all the teaching of the Kabbalah really, there is a term we use for Yetzer Hara. We call it Sitra Achra. What's the translation in Aramaic of this word Sitra Achra? Sitra is like essence, a being, a power. Sitra. Achra is another. What is another? The word another comes from this aspect of there is one, and now there is an additional. Another. The aspect of Yetzer Hara, his fight within the world, is just being another. Being another power, being another leadership, being another option. And the second option creates the chaos. Yetzer Hara's destruction within the world is just being another individual. Or he doesn't even necessarily need to fight. He doesn't necessarily need to run around to manipulate the world. He just needs to be another concept, another entity. And once there is this other, and it's not just one king within the land, then there will always be war. When there is a country that there is one king, there is no war between the people. War between the people only occur when there are two kings that are aligned. Only then the people start losing their lives at one another. Brothers, siblings, cousins, family members, fighting one another. It comes from this aspect of two kings, of two entities, of two leaderships. Yetzer Hara's goal is not to make us fight, not to fight against us, but just to be another. And we see this, Rabotai, with Am Yisrael's biggest enemy. We know, Rabotai, that throughout the entire Torah, there is one group of people Hashem hates. To the point where Hashem says that his kingdomship, his kiseh, his chair, kiseh hakavod, will not be complete until we destroy this nation. It's what nation? Amalek. We always ask ourselves, why was Hashem so upset at Amalek? What did they do already? What was so bad about what they did? Tov, so they came along, they fought Bnei Israel, but didn't many nations fight Bnei Israel? Why was the Amalek, Hashem took their action so personal? Where it says, Machot, Imchet, Zecher, Amalek. Till today, it's a chiyuv deoraita to hear that. Twice a year, that we have to erase Amalek. And if we don't erase him, Hashem's kingdomship is never complete. Why? What did they do that was so bad? So you know, Abatai, what Chazal say, Amalek's goal wasn't to kill Bnei Israel. So if that's the case, why did they go to war against them? Amalek's goal, the Zohar HaKadosh says, was, like what the Gemara says, to cool the heat of faith that existed within the world. They knew they were suiciding. They knew that they're going into a war that they would lose. But that didn't matter to them. They wanted to break the heat of faith that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had. Why so? We just mentioned at the time of the giving of the Torah, the world what? Became one. Where we said, Sod Anochi. And that's the aspect of Az Nivelu, Alufei Edom, Levoa, Vichazamua, Namugupo, Shvekenan, Tipo Elem, Matabafachat. All the kings, their hearts fell knowing that they were no longer king. They lost their position of leadership within the world, being that there is only one king now. Amalek's goal wasn't to fight Bnei Israel in order to kill them. It was just to show the world that now there is a second leader, a second leadership, a second entity, a second movement. No longer the world is reunited in one aspect of Sod Anochi, Sod Aleph, the concept of one, the secret of Aleph of one, but rather now there is a second entity, Amalek. Where Amalek's goal was just to be another desire, another ratzon, another sitra, another form of leadership than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the moment there were two, what could exist in it? Chaos. The moment this aspect of two existed, then the world can return back to its aspect of wars and fights and negativity and bad. Where Amalek's goal was just to be a second. Just to be a sitra achra'ah. To be an additional entity. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that his kingdomship could never be complete until they're destroyed. Being that as long as they are a second. And as long as they are a second, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not an od milvado. He's not this aspect of alone. Because there's another king, there's another leadership. So the desire of Yetzer Hara is not to fight us. It's just to be a second entity, a second option, an alternative. A different path than necessarily HaKadosh Baruch Hu's path. Once there is that existence, all chaos exists. All negativity exists. So what's the answer to this? What's the solution to Yetzer Hara? What's the secret of eliminating Yetzer Hara within our life? So the Torah actually gave us the answer to it. It says in the Torah that before Bnei Israel would go to war, the Kohanim and the leaders, tzaddikim, would gather all Bnei Israel. And they would say, Shema Israel, listen Israel, you are going to a milchama, to a war. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will cause your enemies, yifutzu mipanicha. They will disappear. And we always ask ourselves, how can you tell it to a soldier? You're telling a soldier, you're going to fight an enemy. You're going to tell them, don't worry, you're going to go to war and your enemies will disappear. And it's not that your enemies will fall and be destroyed. They will disappear, they will vanish. How can they vanish? You should tell your soldiers, the enemy is going to be strong, so you have to be stronger, you have to fight them. Fight for your children, fight for them. No, don't worry. You will go to war, your enemies will disappear. It's a counterintuitive thing to motivate the soldier that they're about to go to war. So what was this aspect of Shema Yisrael, you're going to war, and don't worry, your enemies will disappear? The aspect was very simple. What is Shema Yisrael? Rashi says there, Shema Yisrael means Shema Yisrael, like the Tefillah. What is concept of Shema Yisrael? We say Shema Yisrael, Hashem hu Elokeinu, ve'Hashem hu Echad. Listen, Israel. Hashem is our king, and Hashem is only one. And the world is only one, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everything. So their fight and their way of making their enemies disappear, it wasn't even necessarily maybe fighting them. It was causing them to focus and to attach themselves to the state of the world of what? Of Hashem hu Echad. That Hashem is one, that the world is one. En od milvado. And once they came to a place that there is only one, then their enemies no longer held the titlement of an enemy. Because you can't have an enemy within one. You can't have two oppositions within one. That's not one, that's two. So their way of reaching to an aspect of success, it wasn't even necessarily how they fought and how they were able to wield the sword. It was how they made HaKadosh Baruch Hu within an aspect that their enemies truly disappeared because they were no longer enemies. So they essentially brought the world to a place of ichud, of being one, and their enemies would truly disappear. They didn't hold that same title. The way of fighting Yitzhak is not even necessarily fighting him. It's taking him and making him a part of the goal, of the mission. Of understanding that he is a part of the mission. That he is a part of the world. And if he's a part of the world, then obviously his desire should be aligned with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's desire. And that's something we see in all the wars. We read every single Shabbat, we say, we say that before they would go to war, they would take the Aron, the cabinet with the broken tablets were in. And the Ma'am Loya said that they would rally the soldiers, they would put the Aron in the front, and they would hit the opposition army with the Aron, with the tablets. And it said that the tablets would turn into fire, and their enemies would disappear. You fight with Torah, you run with the Sefer Torah, and you start stabbing people. What is that? The idea is that Torah, b'chol netivotei shalom. That they weren't fighting a war bichlal. They were holding the Torah with an aspect of truly trying to reunite the world. Where the Torah itself is reuniting the world. The Torah itself is bringing it all together. So their fight didn't even come in an aspect of a fight. Their fight was just holding on to the Torah. The Torah makes everything one. And if the Torah makes everything one, then even their enemies would become one with them. And if their enemies would become one with them, then they no longer have an enemy. The enemies no longer exist. And that's what we do every day with Shema. Shema, we have to do b'shkuvecha b'komecha. When you go to sleep and when you wake up. Between the time of night and day and night. What's this aspect of Shema? It's reuniting the entire world itself. It's declaring that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one. And that's one of the reasons that Shema is the only prayer that we have an obligation to close our eyes. Why do you close your eyes? Look, what if you don't know how to read? How are you going to read? Why do you close it? It's only time that you have an obligation to close your eyes. Because the aspect of Shema is understanding that Hashem Echad, that Hashem is one. So if Hashem is one, then He's alone in the world. Then if He's alone, then shut off the world, because you're only Him, you're only HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Him. So there is no aspect of looking at the rest of the world. The aspect of Shema that we do every single day is our way of keeping ourselves aligned, of remembering that all the world is all one. It's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if it's all one, then you are alone. It's like the darkness of when you close your eyes. You are alone with yourself. You are alone with your thoughts. You are alone with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The world no longer holds an aspect of a world of itself. You don't see it. It doesn't exist. It's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that, Rabotai, is the fight against Yetzer Hara. It's not even necessarily fighting him. It's understanding that we must bring him back to tshuva. We must hold him, and we must make his desires aligned with our desires, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's desires. And that's what we say with Shema Yisrael. We say, "V'ahavta b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha." How can you love HaKadosh Baruch? How can you love HaKadosh Baruch Hu with two hearts? Why it says levavecha, multiple? So Farshim explained levavecha, your heart Yetzer Tov, and your heart Yetzer Hara. How can you love HaKadosh Baruch with Yetzer Hara? The idea is Yetzer Hara, his job is to try to convince you that there is a second heart, that your body has one desire and your neshama has another desire. Or you say, I'm going to study Torah, I'm going to put my tefillin, and do tefillah, and give tzedakah, and do mitzvot, Baruch Hashem, but physically I have needs of a physical. So I'm going to ignore the spirituality to feed my physical. Since when are the physical and spiritual two different things? In the first place. We even go further, and there's a big question that we asked many years ago of them. How can we say that our neshama sits within our body? It's a deep idea, but how can we say that our body is physical and our neshama is spiritual, but still our life, which is spiritual, because our neshama gives us life, is reliant on physical food? You don't eat, you die. So you don't eat, your neshama leaves. Isn't your neshama spiritual? So the neshama spiritual is reliant on the physical? No. Who said there were two? Who said there were two aspects? It's Yetzer Hara's desires to try to split us and to try to convince us that there are two levavot, that there are two desires, that there are two ma'alechim, there are two paths. And like we said in the beginning, the snake, what did he do? He made a separation within man, where he told him a man's body is one thing, feed your body, feed your what you need, and then the neshama goes to the Torah later. That's Yetzer Hara. That's conflict. Chaos exists by doing so. Fights, wars exist by doing so. The only way to eliminate Yetzer Hara is understanding that your body and your neshama are the same thing. The food has a spiritual aspect and a physical aspect, and they must be aligned with one another. And they must be combined with one another, because they are naturally. We try to separate them. And this is not just within ourselves, it's within the entire world. But sometimes people ask all these questions. Why this? And why that? And why this? And all these questions about what occurs in the world. What happened to our faith? If we believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is behind everything, then clearly this is a part of the plan of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yetzer Hara convinces us that there are some deeds that are done by Hashem, some deeds that are not, some deeds that have meaning, some deeds that don't have meaning, some deeds that just happen for no reason, some deeds that happen with a reason. Who created the separation? Who told you when is what and what is what? Within the world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created everything. If He created everything, then everything is His doing, and everything in His plan. And if that's the case, everything is good. We only create questions and chaos and conflict when we start to separate things from one another. But if we hold Hashem Echad Ushmo Echad, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one, and there is only one, and there isn't even an aspect of a question. And this is what the Zohar HaKadosh says. Yetzer Hara fights with the person to convince him that there is another. And that's what it even says about Adam. The Zohar HaKadosh says that how did the Yetzer Hara and the angel Sama cause the snake to go make Adam sin with the Etzadat, tree of knowledge? So the Zohar HaKadosh says that the Sama, the angel of evil, he couldn't fight Adam face to face. Because if he was to fight Adam face to face, Adam would look and say, you are my enemy. Why would I listen to what you're telling me to do? And that also applies to every person. How can you listen to your Yetzer Hara if you know that he is your enemy? So the secret, his trick, is that he doesn't fight you face to face. Because you know that if he's going to fight you face to face, you're going to recognize that he's your enemy. So you're not going to listen to what your enemy is telling you to do. So what does he do? Zohar HaKadosh says that the Sama hid behind the snake. We fought within the shadows. He fought within the tzelim. And through the tzel, at where the darkness of the individual exists, there he was able to go behind the snake and face the Adam through the body of the snake and not through his own shape and form, which is the angel of Sama. And that's how he was able to sin. The Zohar HaKadosh says the fight of the Satan is the fight of the shades. And we can even see it amongst us. What's a tzelim, a shade? It's an aspect, it's this image of you that emanates from you that looks to be like another entity. But it's not. Yetzer Hara is the shade. He tries to convince us that he's another part of us, that he's not one with us, that he needs to be aligned with the divine will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Our job is to look at our shade and laugh and say, no, you are just me. You're just the light that's on me. When there is light that's on me, there is always a balance of freedom. So there is always light and darkness. So we have to say, look, you're just the existence of the fact that there is light. You are a part of light. You are part of Yetzer Hara. And that's what happened. That's what existed at the time before the sin. The Satan was in Gan Eden. He wasn't the bad angel. He was a part of the Eden. He was a part of the field of paradise, of Gan Eden. His job was always to try to become another. And that, Rabotai, is the secret of all conflicts within our life. It exists within ourselves. When we have conflicting desires, it's all Yitzhara. There is no such thing as a man's two desires, one spiritual, one good, one bad. No. There's only one good. Yitzhara's trick is to convince us that there is a bad. There is no bad. There's all good within the person, within the world, to convince us that there is a second entity. Even within relationships with one another. We see so many couples, especially today, they fight and all this war. Marriage was so simple at the time. It said that when Adam HaRishon saw Chava, his wedding, there was no edin, witnesses, ceremony. It was a very simple concept. He looked at Chava, he said, Etzem mi'atzami, basar mi-besari, lezot ikari isha, bone like from my bone, flesh like my flesh, she is my wife. Or in simpler words, he looked at Chava, saw himself, saw one entity, and he said, now that's a wife. Where the aspect of a partner, a friend, a husband or a wife, it's not looking at the individual as another individual. Not at all. It's understanding that you need to be one. And as long as you are one and your interests are my interests and my interests are your interests, then your desire is my desire and my desire is your desire, then there'll never be conflict. There'll never be chaos. Chaos and conflict only exist when there's two. So you see those couples say, she did that to me. Why don't you say you did that to you? And then you'll end up being more upset at yourself than at the other. You'll realize that there's no reason to fight. The fight starts when you start to look at yourself like your own entity, and the other like his own, and that's what partners too. When does a partnership decay? When the one partner is thinking of himself and what he takes, and not looking at his partner like his own. That's when a partnership falls apart. What keeps the partnership together is the other is him, and him is the other. So what allows lack of chaos within our world is one. When there are two, when there are multiple, all chaos could exist. All balagans and all wars and all negative could exist within the world. And that's his concept of Yaakov. Yaakov is Yud. Chokhmah, Yud represents the knowledge, conscious. Ekev. If you take the word Yaakov, it's Yud and Ekev. Yud is the conscience. Ekev is like the feet. Yaakov's job was always to connect them both. To connect the highest and the lowest. To connect all aspects of the man, all aspects of the world, all aspects of existence into one entity, into one concept. When there is one, there can't be two. It's like someone asked us a few years ago, how do I deal with tough clients? Tough clients in the work. Whether, it doesn't matter what job he had. So we told them, don't face him. Don't face one another face to face. Sit beside them. When you sit beside them, you change the energy of the room. You change the main goal of the room. Because now you're no longer facing one another, but you are facing the problem together. Facing the situation together. So the energy completely changes. Yaakov's job within this world is to connect all the aspects, even from the Sfirot level. There is Chesed, there is Gvura, there is Tiferet, and there is the rest of the Sfirot. But more importantly, the Tiferet sits as the core. It's like the torso, it's the chest area. The chest area holds the neck, which is the head, the arms, the legs, the brit. It's all held together by Yaakov, by Tiferet. Yaakov's job was to combine it all. And that's what we see in this parasha. Yaakov starts to travel. He reaches a level of levado. What's levado? It's an aspect that he's so close with HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he becomes what? He becomes alone. Where him and Hashem are one now. Yaakov reached this level of being truly alone within the world. Once he was alone, what's the job of Yetzer Hara, of the evil? To try to create another. To try to be there to combat. To try to create a distraction. To try to be another entity, another desire that exists within the world. That, Abutai, is our test within the world. It's making the entire world a part of Hashem, good, or what seems to be bad. Of making every aspect within ourselves align with the desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Making every person around us align with the desire of us, which is the desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Our trick of combating all negative is destroying its existence by unifying it all. And that's, Abotai, in very, very short, something that we could even see in Chanukah. Chanukah, we know, is Chanukah. So most of the Mefarshim, they said Chanu, like they rested. There was peace at Ka, at Kaf Hei. Kaf Hei is Kaf Hei B'Kislev, 25 of Kislev. We said, maybe we get something different. Chanu, they rested. Ka, what's Ka? 25. If you count Shema Yisrael, you have how many words? 25. They rested when they came to a place of Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. We see even the menorah. We say all the candles, they were all miksha achat, they were all one aspect, they were all one concept, where the right and the left, they were all what? Ya'iru el penei menorah. They were all pointing in the same direction. Rabbi Moshe Pinto says, the right represents good, the left represents evil. Even the good, even the bad, they were all pointed in the path of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chanukah is this aspect of what? It's a reuniting the world. Bringing all together. Even the menorah was built from one piece of gold. There was no pieces behind it. It couldn't be pieces because its goal was to reunite everything. Once there is reunion, there is no destruction. There is no chaos. When we could reunite our world and make our problems a part of the solution, that's when we realize that we don't have problems at all. Our Yetzer Hara is a part of what needs to be worshipping HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Our challenges are what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us in order for us to be better. Everything within the world is one. And when we make something one, we destroy our enemy. Because an enemy can't exist when there is one. And that's what we say. B'ayom hahu yeh Hashem echad u'shmo echad. At the time of the Geulah, at least the Chazal explained it to be, at the time of the Geulah, Hashem will be one and His name will be one. Everything will be one. But we always said, the word Bayom Hahu is very unique. What does Bayom Hahu mean? Bayom Hahu is like when I say, Sefer Hahu. It's like you're pointing at something. Hahu, it's that chair. Kiseh Hahu. So what's Bayom Hahu? What's this like pointing language? So maybe we can say, Bayom Hahu is this aspect that we can choose when Hashem Echad and Shmo Echad will be. With the day that we decide to reunite ourselves, we make all our desires one, to make HaKadosh Baruch Hu one, we make the world one, then really HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem Echad, Shmo Echad. But it needs to come within our power of our hands of choosing that day. And when we point at that day, when we choose on that day, we can truly destroy all evil and build a world full of Simcha, and full of Yeshua, and full of Torah, and full of positivity, and no ability for any negative to even exist. So Bezrat Hashem, Kadosh Baruch Hu bless us all, that we will all reunite all the different aspects within ourselves. We'll reunite all Am Yisrael with one another. We'll reunite all the world, all the objects, every object in the world will be an object of Kedusha. Then once we will bring every object, every single piece of our world with Kedusha, we'll truly be able to sit in an aspect of Levado, of alone with Melech Malchei Melachim. So Bezrat Hashem, we all feel alone in an aspect that will be only us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if we do so, we will live lives full of bracha and tzlacha. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless all tzaddikim, all tzaddikot that brought all this together. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu spend abundance, shefa b'lidai. And may HaKadosh will all come together as one in a personal redemptions and redemption by Hashem for all Klal Yisrael. Amen. Shabbat Shalom V'Varach and Chag Sameach to all in this beautiful Chag that we are approaching, Bat-Chen.